Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel, and today I had to talk about what has been discussed across the board, probably one of the biggest headlines throughout the world and the United States, and a question that I have gotten in the last 2 days: is Russia preparing to invade the Ukraine? Before we get into that, before I answer your question, I know I'm teasing you just a bit, we need to look at this from a historical standpoint. So, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine had the world's third largest nuclear arsenal on its territory. When Ukrainian-Russian negotiations on removing these weapons from Ukraine appeared to break down in September 1993, the U.S. government engaged in a trilateral process with Ukraine and Russia. The result was that the trilateral statement, signed in January 1994, under which Ukraine agreed to transfer the nuclear warheads to Russia for elimination. This is very key right here. In return, Ukraine received security assurances from the United States, Russia, and Britain, compensation for the economic value of the highly enriched uranium in the warheads, which could be blended down and converted into fuel for nuclear reactors. Okay, so the key point here is the fact that an arrangement was made with the Ukraine that if they got rid of the nuclear weapons that were stored there by Russia, that if a situation occurred like Russia going into Crimea or into Ukraine, the United States and Great Britain would have a response. So that's the history. And I did borrow a little bit of that information because I was looking it up to kind of use it as a refresher. And basically we have, from the Brookings Institute, a very similar outline to what happened. If you guys want to read all of the particular details and the finagling that was going on during the Clinton administration, you guys can just kind of Google these headlines and topics here if you want to. So what's important here is from The Atlantic: was Obama too soft on Russia? President Trump is not the first to make this claim. Now, as I just read you and told you, let me just say this. Our allies and our adversaries have a totally different approach to the United States depending on whether we have a Democrat or a Republican president. When we have a Democrat president, there are a few things that are almost absolutely certain. Taxes are going to go up, which is going to cause economic distress in the United States, causing issues, causing problems, because the Democrats like using these sorts of maneuvers to punish their adversaries in the United States. And of course, we know that the establishment, working alongside the mainstream media, the Democrats, activists, and special interests, wanted to make sure that President Trump was not president again for another 4 years because he was benefiting the country and holding all these people back. And just like in this particular situation with President Obama or any Democrat president that we've seen in history, our adversaries and our allies, who claim to be allies, know exactly how to contend with a Democrat president. He is the most manipulated president by our adversaries and by our allies than any other president, or, anyone who's not a Republican. And so they know how to manipulate this. So China, Russia, North Korea, and the Middle East, of course, are very, very engaged in saber rattling. And with the disaster that took place, shameful disaster that took place in Afghanistan, this sort of thing here that we're seeing with Russia, with China, with the Middle East is exactly what we're going to get, if not worse, under a Democrat president. So this is what happened under Obama. Now, as I just read to you, there were supposed to be assurances to the Ukraine that the United States and the UK would act if Russia went in. Well, Russia went into Crimea, and the United States and the UK did nothing. All right? So President Trump sees this as an opportunity to explain to people, to educate people on the fact that, in simple terms, in my biased conservative opinion, President Trump was illustrating this very key point, is that our adversaries and allies behave differently when there is a Democrat president. Russia knows this. China knows this because they can better relate to a Democrat president because of the way Democrat presidents behave and what their particular criteria are for their governance. Russia knows how to exploit and take advantage of this, and so does China. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. So, as a candidate, Donald Trump suggested he would recognize the annexation, a position his spokesman, Sean Spicer, contradicted Tuesday when he said Trump expects the Russian government to return Crimea. Now, because the media runs interference and coverage for both Biden and Obama, what happened with Obama was an embarrassment to the United States. Russia crossed a line that the Democrats or the Democrat president said could not be crossed, and Russia did it. Not only to spite the United States, but to demonstrate to the world that Russia was going to do what it wanted to do, and China can do pretty much the same thing. If you ask me, as many people have in the last several days, do I think that Russia will go into the Ukraine? My answer is they've already gone into the Ukraine. They went into Crimea. I talked to a close friend of mine, an acquaintance that I know and have known for many years, adopted several children from the Ukraine, from Kiev, which is the capital of the Ukraine. We talked for some time, and she gave me some videos of individuals there in Crimea. And basically the way that Obama and the United States was able to save face, or the United Kingdom and the United States was able to save face, was the fact that once Russia was in Crimea, they held elections. Now, call the elections whatever you will, because of course we were accused, or Russia was accused, of interfering with President Trump's election. And of course there in Europe, we know that there is levels of interference within elections, much more of an issue there than here. But they held an election in Crimea, which surprisingly, among the Crimean people, they said that they wanted the Russians there. So they kind of welcomed them there. So that kind of allowed for Obama and the UK to save face. And of course, CNN does everything it can, or did everything it could back then, to run interference for Obama. What can Obama do about Russian invasion of Crimea? And Washington, CNN, the Kremlin sends troops across the border and the United States and its allies cry foul. No, they just cried, because the United States really wasn't going to do anything. Obama, well, let's just say this. The Russians and the Chinese and our adversaries know how better to manipulate a Democrat president than a Republican president. That's not to suggest or imply that a Democrat president is the only president that is manipulated or attempted to be manipulated by our adversaries and our allies, but it is easier for them to manipulate a Democrat president because so much of what a Democrat does is superficial, right? It's all about optics. It's all about saving face. It's all about posturing and all of these very superficial things. In other words, it's mostly, superficial on the level because, as we already saw, Russia went into Crimea and the United States and the UK did nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean they didn't take any action to push the Russians out. That's what people understand. And this is what President Trump was trying to say when we go back to the Atlantic, right? The reason President Trump behaved the way he behaved with Russia and China, which the Democrats and people in America was like, oh my God, he's like a bull in a china cabinet. What a goof, what an oaf, what an ogre. He's so dumb. Why is he doing what he's doing? Because this is what the Russians and Chinese understand. Actual action, right? Russia went into Crimea and nothing happened. Okay. You could say, oh, what do you mean, Buzz? They're so biased. Well, there may have been international sanctions. There may have been banking sanctions. There may have been blockades. But guess what? Russia is still in Crimea, violating the trilateral agreement that the United States and the UK told the Ukraine, if this were to happen, we would go and help you. And the United States and the UK did nothing. Now, the other problem we have when it comes to this, and probably why many of you asked me about this. Now, keep in mind here, I am not an expert on these topics. What I do is I read information, I collect information, I look at history, I look at the information about history, and then I make very simple deductions, which anyone can do, which is what I'm explaining to you now, and you guys can make your own deductions. Sadly, in the United States, we can't depend on our mainstream media to give us credible, tangible, substantive, good quality information because they run their business. And they need to get clicks and they need to make money. So they have to write headlines and they have to write stories and they have to create content to get their business going. So sadly, individuals probably for the most part ask me what I think because they don't want to disseminate through all of this nonsense. That's what I do here on the BuzWeaver channel, by the way. Don't forget to click like on that and comment down below on why you like the fact that I break all this down. Take the complicated, try to make it simple. 5 things to know about Russia's troop buildup near Ukraine. Let me give you number 1 reason. The United States and the UK aren't going to do anything. I know that's very bold. That's very brash. I'm adjusting the microphone quite often because it's kind of leaking down. I can't tighten it right now. But anyway, so we started off. So from the Hill could be more serious than 2014 invasion. I disagree. The only reason they're saying it could be more serious than the 2014 invasion is because they want to prop things up to make Joe Biden potentially look good should he make any kind of or take any kind of action, which will be absolutely minimal. It will be very little. Russians know this. The Chinese know this, and the Middle Easterns know this, especially from what happened, the complete debacle there in Afghanistan. So Russians emboldened, China's emboldened, North Korea's emboldened, the Middle East is emboldened. This is going to be a test for Joe Biden. Experts warn Russia's military buildup on the border of Ukraine is posing a more serious threat than its previous invasion and annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. How? How is it? Russia went in, and they're in Crimea. That is the fact. That is the reality. The media cannot bend reality to convince people that the United States and the UK were able to do something because Russia is in Crimea. You will see this in the Friday vlog. So stay tuned. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the BuzWeaver channel and click that like button. You will see on Friday, I go into the details of how Joe Biden, the administration, the Democrats, and the progressives are falling apart. Biden is upping the diplomatic consequences. Okay, Russia, China, the Middle East, our adversaries, have already compensated for these consequences. Russia would not be doing what it's doing if it weren't prepared to know what the ramifications were. This is a problem that the Biden administration and Democrats have. They are more talk than action. They are more about the superficial and optics than they are about the substance. Russia and China and the Middle East understand what action and substance is, and that's why they do this. This is why the saber rattling and then slowly putting and crossing that red line. So Biden upping the diplomatic consequences, Russia is already prepared for it. They already know. Yet U.S. troops maintain readiness. Well, of course, the U.S. troops are always going to maintain readiness unless, of course, it's under President Trump. And then, of course, it's President Trump wants to be an imperialist and wants to invade foreign countries, this, that, and the other. President Trump was probably the least warlike president that we've had in many, many years. When it comes to war, the general consensus, and this is very general here, is that Democrats usually have an aspersion for it, right? They usually don't want to be involved in war. That goes back to World War II. That goes back to Vietnam. That goes to the Gulf War, as well as the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. The Democrats were very reluctant. They're very, very, very reluctant to get involved in war. The unique aspect of that, of course, is, when Obama adopted the Middle Eastern war from Bush. And then suddenly, because Obama had adopted it, Obama actually did more there in the Middle East than even Bush did, and we slowly started seeing that change of pace, that change of mindset of Democrats to be a little bit more war-friendly. I know that's a kind of a weird way of expressing it, but suffice it to say, Obama got a great deal of support for his actions in the Middle East, which would be abhorrent to your typical classic liberal and those, of course, who are against war. Part of Russia's border destabilizing behavior. Well, they've, again, another completely useless statement because they're already in Crimea. Along with Russia amassing tens of thousands of troops on the border with Ukraine, U.S. officials have also denounced Moscow's support of this particular President Alexander and his alleged efforts to spark an immigrant crisis in Europe. No, that's just a diversion tactic. That is just something that the media and the Joe Biden administration can cling to and suggest that should Russia go in, this was going to be the reason, right? So the United States is already backpedaling. The Biden administration is already backpedaling, already trying to find excuses should Russia move forward. Ukrainians security, a rare area of bipartisan support. Ukraine is a key U.S. ally. Really? Did we come through for Ukraine? Did we make good with Ukraine? Did we live up to our promises with the Ukraine? Have the Russians, have the Chinese, have the Middle Easterners seen that we have not lived up to our agreement with the Ukraine? Ally and Kiev shift away from Russia and towards the West is viewed as both a symbolic and strategic advantage, bolstering the protection of neighboring NATO allied countries as a key economic partner and connecting Europe and Eurasia. Wow, that is so beautiful. They should put that on a postcard because it means nothing. Right? Russia is in Crimea and they've not left. They are still there. And yet President Trump was getting all kinds of grief about talking to the Ukrainian leader. Right? And then, of course, what was all covered up with Joe Biden telling Russia to fire an attorney or they would not get money. And then, of course, we have the Hunter Biden situation. Do I think the Russians could invade Ukraine? If they were going to do it, this would be the best time to do it. Now, it would hurt Russia tremendously if they did this, not just in the perspective of the world's eye, but essentially because Joe Biden is so ineffectual, because things are destabilizing here in the United States, the way Russia could save face is to just saber rattle and wait for the new Republican administration to come through in 2022, which we're also going to talk about in the Friday vlog because the Democrats are panicking. I mean, they are having that emergency meeting with the administration to figure out how they can make Joe Biden look better. So Russia is not dumb. China is not dumb. They are all working together to take advantage of this very feckless, very anemic president when it comes to his effectiveness. He's incredibly ineffectual. So, speaking of China, U.S. won't send diplomats to Olympic over China's egregious human rights abuse. China is not concerned about human rights abuses. China is not concerned about how its people are treated. China, the CCP, the Communist Party, is concerned with cooperation and efficiency, compliance and efficiency. Human rights is something alien to the Chinese. And this is the problem that we have here in the West. People need to understand foreign countries are a different culture. They have a different mindset. China is not concerned about human rights. It is a communist country. They are concerned about cooperation. They are concerned about efficiency. They are not concerned about whether people are being satisfied by what the CCP does. The CCP just does, and then the people will be satisfied. So, but this is a slap to the face of the Chinese, at least the CCP, because of course one of the highest values, one of the highest virtues that China have is a social and cultural process or value called face. And essentially, as it implies, China does not want to lose face. They don't want to look weak. They don't want to look inferior. Because China, of course, was exploited for many years. They were abused. They were taken advantage of by many countries in the world. And now China is very much not wanting to be shamed again. And so this is why face is one of the biggest cultural things that China engages in. And this is really a slap to the CCP, not to the Chinese people. I empathize greatly with the Chinese people because it is not them that they're not even aware of what's going on because the CCP keeps them suppressed because the CCP is only really concerned with efficiency. Now, the UK won't send officials to Beijing either, which is just kind of a response. Actually, there's several other countries. I'm not sure why I can't pause this. That's very annoying. But suffice it to say, the UK won't send top officials to Beijing Winter Olympics either. There are several other countries that aren't doing this. But if you guys do want to know more about this, of course, I always turn to my good buddy here, Serpent ZA Winston, who vlogged out of China for over 10 years. He is someone who knows a great deal about China, having lived there, as well as Matthew, his business partner. Matthew, that would be Lawai86. You guys have heard me talk about these guys quite often. I am going to link his video below this video, and I would encourage you guys to check it out if you want to know exactly a very nice, well-rounded gist of what all is going on there and how China is responding. And this is what I had for you guys today. And of course, I want to thank all of you guys for your continued support. All of you watching on new tech, on the new platforms, Odyssey, Rumble, all these newer platforms, BitChute. I appreciate your guys' support. Of course, by all means, give me a follow there. You're welcome to comment down below on those videos as well. And for all of you here on YouTube, thank you for the likes, the shares, and the comments. I try to bring you these videos mostly when you guys request them, and I got a lot of requests to cover this particular topic, so I hope I've done a pretty good job despite my rambling. And of course, appearing right there on the screen, that would be the channel icon for all of you watching here on YouTube. You guys can click on that to subscribe, as well as notifications. That way you'll know when there's content here on the channel, as well as those video shorts that I do in gaming. Thank you all for your continued support, and I will see you guys in the Friday vlog.